Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to see you again. It's our third meeting with synergy between Beware and self-sufficient homesteading and gardening. And we're very excited about today's topic. We're talking about the start of the bee season and the spring season. Now, I don't know about you, but my fingers have been itchy a long time to start planting. And even though it's still a little bit chilly on my side, I've started to put in some seeds and protecting them a bit because I just cannot wait anymore. So yeah, so I think Warwick, if you start with your preparations for beekeeping for the season starting, that would be great.
All right, great. Thanks, Tanya. Yeah, I mean, it's just been, everybody thinks like 1st of September is the big day, but actually, I mean, that's a great day. Don't get me wrong. You know, it's spring, right? Yeah. But actually, bee season officially starts 1st of August in South Africa, in the Southern Hemisphere. Simply because what you need to do is all the prep beforehand, and also the bees start trekking and splitting because they know what's coming as well instinctually this time of year. And where they've been so far has been in a period of dearth, just like pretty much everything in nature at the moment, Southern Hemisphere over the winter period. So having said that, what's going to happen is that usually if they haven't had enough food up until now, they're either going to split or they're going to actually swarm. The entire colony will swarm and go to a place where there is food. And so this is vital for beekeepers this time of year, especially beginner beekeepers. They're always asking us, you know, where do we get bees from? How do we get bees? You know, especially if we can't afford to buy bees, because that's fairly an expensive avenue of going, where you can actually just get bees and catch them if you know how to do that. So we'll cover a little bit about that today as well. But if you're already a beekeeper, who's already beekeeping? Anybody in the group? If you're going to wave your hand or, you know, say hello. Okay, cool. Anthony, awesome. Robert, how's it? Welcome. Patrick, cool. Well done. All right, I can't see everybody, but I'm assuming there's a few more of you. But if you're already beekeeping, and there are a few of you guys on board, you know, one of the most important things right now is actually clearing your apiary area. All right, if you should have had a fire breaker in the beginning of winter anyway, at the end of autumn, but right now you need to go in and clear your apiary, make sure that you have easy access to your bees, and any debris and everything that's fallen over or overgrown or whatever during the winter period, unlikely, but it can happen. Make sure it's all cleared up, ready for the bees to have efficient access to their hives. That's one of the things that's really important. In addition to that, look, I'm going to hand over to Tanya now as well, because I know you guys have to do as homesteaders. You've got to prepare as well. So give us some insights into what your guys' preparation is around groundworks and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's a pity, Warwick. Yes, it's such a pity we only started with these Zoom talks now, because preparation for spring actually starts right in the beginning of winter already. Trying to or getting some mulch on the soil, etc., and letting the soil rest in some places, and working in some compost, etc. But seeing that we've only started now, we must do with what we have at this time that we have. So, and it's not too late. It's not too late. It's just there's longer routes we take from winter, which we all do ourselves, because homesteaders like to do things themselves with the resources they have in general. But we can still, it's August, we can still make some plans with what we have. Otherwise, we just bring in a heap of compost if we haven't been working on our compost heaps, and we start off like that. Now, something that's very important to me and that I've learned a lot about is planning versus no planning. And I'm an impulsive type of person. I don't plan a lot, but no. I've realized
real?
Yes. Yes. Now I've realized over the years that the no planning system is not working so well for me. Why? Because you'll see on the group, oh hell, what did I plant? Can somebody identify this for me? I'm not sure what this is. And then you just don't know. And I've planted some really awesome varieties and that I've never seen in my life before. And then it's been plucked out because you're thinking it's a weed or something else. So you lose a lot of your wonderful stuff that you don't know what it is. For instance, I planted Tsenza for the first time last year. I didn't mark it. I don't know where my Tsenza is. I don't think it ever survived. And Tsenza was like this crop that I'm really, really excited about. So no plan versus plan. And I see the no plan people, like the very the guys in permaculture, they do a lot of planning, yes, but they also like their food forests, and everything just goes anywhere. You have this growing next, it's not rows and etc. So I do like a food forest too, but I do want to know what I plant. So in terms of planning, I've learned that now we need to plan. So my first thing that I do obviously is make sure the soil is prepared so it can either rest or just then start the moss decomposing, etc., on the soil,
right.
etc. So that while that's busy, I take out my seed supply. Now I've got probably about 250 different varieties of seeds. And then I sit and I start planning, what do I want to plant this season coming? So I work through all of them. And once I have determined what I want to plant, I start doing my markers. I start preparing markers. I don't know if you can see. Let me see. There we go. I've got these little plastic markers I write on. So I prepare them beforehand so they're all ready. So by the time I want to plant, it's not like, oh, I still have to do the markers. They're already ready. So that's all ready. And I pack it in a little tray with the seeds and the markers, So you don't have to, I've gone through that as well, chucked all the markers in one tray and all the seeds in another tray. And with so many varieties that I do plant, it gets quite frustrating. So having it a bit organized is very, very good.
Yeah.
And then what I also do is I draw a picture of my gardens. I've got 4 vegetable gardens. And then I draw a picture. I'm not very technologically inclined, so I like it with pen and paper. I draw a picture and then I decide what do I want to plant there. And what's important about this is crop rotation, because you can't plant beetroot and onions and potatoes and everything in the same bed the whole time. You have to rotate it, because things like your beans are nitrogen fixers. So you plant beans and then in that one, next time you plant some carrots or whatever the case may be. So crop rotation is very important. And if you do keep track with a chart that you draw of your garden, then last time, well, you will probably know if you're involved, but you'll know the last 3 years or whatever, what you planted where, and your crop rotation goes really well. So that's another part of the planning that's very important. Then also I started with my seedling trays, etc. I do have some seedling trays, but I've got a really exciting thing we're working on. I don't know if any of you would be interested in hearing more about.
Are you talking about what we're working on, or is this something else?
Well, it's another thing.
Oh, no, another thing. All right, cool.
The poo thing, what to do with poo. You remember?
Oh, yes, I remember that.
What to do with poo. So we'll do that talk. You can't miss it. So if you guys are interested with what to do with poo, and it's got something to do with the containers that you plant your seeds in, just give us a thumbs up or something. Then we can know if you would like to do, because he can do stuff with poo and I can do stuff with poo. So I'm making these awesome containers, and we will share it with you if you're interested. And my fingers.
Just to interject there quickly, Tanya, on this note, just so that we might have people here that don't know about the side project that we're working on, besides doing the Zoom talks on Fridays. Yeah. Is that we building a side project, guys, that's around packaging the best kind of seeds for bees, for homesteaders and smallholders, and anybody who's got a small plot or anything like that wants to grow something that's edible. Whether it's short-term, medium-term, long-term, we're going to have most likely three different packages, and that's something it's a work in progress right now. So those are that's where we are with that. And then you're going to be able to buy them according to what you want to do. If you want to just grow something that's short-term and it's a cash crop, for example, we'll have a pack of seeds that are going to be most beneficial for the bees, but also are going to benefit from having bees. So it's going to be an awesome synergy and symbiosis between the beekeeping side of things and the homesteading side of things and self-sustaining gardening, where we can promote pollination, the boosting of the yield and the crop yield and the harvesting on those particular seeds that are planted by you guys. And then obviously the honey that you're going to get from the bees is just going to be a bonus, right? And so is all the other byproducts that we're going to be talking about throughout the Zoom talk series. So yeah, cool. Just thought I'd remind everybody about that and introduce it to anybody who didn't know about it before. So cool. That's going to be our bees, seeds for bees kind of project. Name not name, to be decided.
Yes.
But that is trademark.
And you can send us
trademark and copyrighted, okay, just in case we decide to use it.
And you can send us suggestions if you like. And
yes, please.
We get a lot of questions from people. What can we plant for the bees to get more pollinators into our gardens, etc. So this will be a very helpful resource. But anyway, so yes, back to the seedlings. I couldn't wait. I know it's still a tiny bit cold, but I just said stuff that I can't wait anymore. So I went outside. I've probably planted about 50 different varieties of things into my little containers, which we will tell you about in what to do with poo. And yes, I've covered them with straw, so the cold won't affect them so much. So let's see how they're germinating. Maybe by next week I can give you some feedback and some photos on how it's going. So yes. Perfect. So that's another thing, depending on which area in South Africa, or I see Robert is from Zimbabwe, what the weather is like where you are.
As well.
Yes. And in Cape Town, I see Paul is joining for the first time. Hi, Paul. Anyway, so depending on what your weather is like where you are, you can start planting. It's warm enough in some areas.
Yeah.
I'm taking a bit of a risk because we get a lot of frost here, and our weather starts getting really warm up here in Limpopo, and then we get that surprise frost, which kills everything off. So that's why I've got the grass, the hay on top of my. Yes.
Yeah.
So, but my seedling trays are ready, the ones that are still empty, and they are only not filled yet because I haven't had time for everything. So that's something you can look at. Make sure you've got your germination mix in place. And what are you using for your germination mix? So you need to prepare that. You need to think about these things. Do you need to go buy vermiculite for your seedling trays? What do you want to put in there? For mine is very, very basic and simple. I use my vermicompost from my worm farm. And that's another thing we can discuss in future as well, how to build a worm farm, because it's such a nice thing to do.
Yeah. And it can create income as well, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, there was a project. Sorry, just quickly to interject, but there was a community project. Let's put it this way, it wasn't just beekeeping, but there was a community project that I saw in East London. I consulted on about 3 years ago, and these guys were doing welding. They had a welding school, and then they were doing welding, and then they were doing furniture making, and then they already started beekeeping. That's why they got me involved on the consulting side. But they were doing all sorts of stuff. It was pretty cool. And at the end of the day, they also had a word farm. They actually had a worm farm. And I mean, when they showed us this, they were making, I can't quite remember the figures now because it was off topic for me, but they showed us, they obviously took us on a tour around, and they had towers of about 4 buckets deep, and then with a tap at the bottom, and in the last one. And I mean, these guys were generating, obviously they must have been generating X amounts, of super juice, super food for the plants on a weekly basis from this farm. And I mean, out of the 4 towers, made up of 4 towers each, not all of them were 4 at this stage, because obviously they were staging it and tearing it. But most of them had 4 towers, and they must have had, it was about 5 rows, 5 columns by about 6 deep. So what's that, 30, give or take, plus 4 towers. It was a really good little setup, and a nice little income earner on the side. And if you're not using it yourself, or if you're using some of it yourself, cool. But you could also look at selling it on to people who want organic fertilizer. Awesome.
Brilliant.
So thanks for that one. That's great. Great idea.
I've got 2 worm farms at this stage. I've used old baths to build them, and the baths works beautifully. And I just keep adding. I just had one, and then I had to do a demonstration, so I added another one. So I think I should organize another demonstration so I can add some more, because it's just so much fun. Now I've got a lady that comes, and she loves just picking out the worms and then giving me the soil. There's a method to let the worms move away so you can harvest soil, but she just loves to take it out with her hands. And interestingly enough, there's been some articles that I've seen that says that by putting your hands into soil, there's microorganisms in the soil that actually helps against depression, and it raises your mood, etc. So it's just it's a really great thing to do. And when if you take that wormy compost and you just put it to your nose, it just smells so lovely and earthy. It's just so rewarding. You need to do this anyway, but we'll do a talk on that too. So back to our germination mix. I use my wormy compost, then I use some sweated poo. See what to do with poo. I've got lots of that. I've got cattle, I've got goats, I've got sheep, I've got chickens. So I've got a lot at my disposal. So, and it lies on heaps. And by the way, the chickens love it. If you've got heaps of poo lying, they scratch in it and they find all the grub worms, etc. So then I mix it with my sweated poo, my vermicompost, and I add some sand. And if I'm going to use small trays, then I add some vermiculite. So those are things to look at. You get germination mix at the nursery, etc. But I'm quite a frugal person, so I want to use what is at my disposal. And it's been working for me for years. So that's something you need to look at, getting your seedling trays and your seedling mix ready.
Just on a quick note around compost, right, and fertilizer. Yes. Interestingly enough, one of the bylaws in South Africa, at least that I know of, generally speaking, is that the cities and the municipalities, for obvious reasons, in some cases, prefer that they stipulate that beehives shouldn't be kept within 5 meters of a compost heap.
Okay.
So that's just something to keep note of for anybody who's wanting to keep bees or is keeping bees right now. I think it's largely just simply so that bees don't take any infected water or substances from the compost itself. But the thing is, you know what, you can't control bees, and in any event, bees are, whenever they return to the hive, everything has been coated with propolis, and they do get checked by the guard bees anyway at the front door. So generally speaking, the only issue really is to make sure that you're keeping to the bylaws. You know, I don't see there being a great risk with that, but I just think it's a good point to make now while we're talking about fertilizer.
Okay, that's a good point.
Thanks, Tanya.
Listen, I see there's a question. What are the towers for? Basically,
I've typed an answer.
Okay, you can answer that.
But no, carry on. Go for it.
Okay, the towers, they put them on top of each other. So when you water them, because you need to give them some water, it runs through all these containers, and at the end of the bottom, you've got a tap, and then you can harvest your worm tea, etc. So the liquid that comes from it. So I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, Warwick.
No, I said pretty much the same thing. And then obviously the degradation of the stuff goes through the different towers as well. You know?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, okay. So, I mean, in terms of the beekeeping side of things, we also have to do maintenance this time of year. So aside from the apiary, what's really important is if you're already keeping bees, and I know we have a few people on board here, is that you should be doing your annual inspection right now. There is a caveat. There are conditions and terms to this, which is basically like Tanya was saying. If your area is expecting any kind of cold front or frost right now in the next week, obviously don't open your hives, because you're going to break the seal of propolis on those hives, and that's what's keeping the internal climate control of the hives most efficient. All right. So if you go and break the seal now, you're going to be introducing gaps in there, and we don't want that if a cold front's coming. However, if you suspect and if you can find out using weather service apps and stuff like that over the next week, 2 weeks or so, you're not expecting any cold fronts, by all means, you should be doing your maintenance inspection like ASAP. And the reason for this is that over this period of the time, over this year, what's happened is that with the bees and the queen laying laying up to 2,000 eggs a day during the height of the summer peak period. Okay, what's happened is that that's all contracted now down to 300 eggs a day during the dearth period. There's not enough food for them to keep going, and they don't need to use the same amount of resources. So, and at times what can happen is that they actually expel and boot out the drones, the male bees. Okay, because all they do really is they are the lazy boys. You know, they're like the lazy teenage boys that just want to eat, party, and sleep. Okay. So they only take up resources, and really their only value, they don't do any work in a hive. The only value is to actually mate the queen when there is one to mate with, which is not yet. that will be probably in the next 3 to 4 weeks, give or take. So if you have been seeing drones, the big Jeep, Cherokee Jeep style bees being kicked out of your hive and they're dead on the floor, you now know why. But what are we going to do during the maintenance period? Well, I do cover a lot of this in the online course that we offer now and our workshops that we have in Midrand. But essentially what you're trying to do is that with all of that laying that's been happening in the hive, a lot of the time what happens is whenever a new bee comes out of the cell, that cell gets cleaned, and then it gets a very tiny, a micro amount of a relaying, basically a resurfacing of that cell. And eventually what ends up happening is that your original cell size at 100% becomes 95, becomes 90, becomes 85, becomes 80. And what can happen if that period of time, if over a period of 2 years, let's say, nobody's done any maintenance, annual maintenance on your hives, okay, on your brood especially, what ends up happening is not only is the opportunity for your queen to lay eggs lower, because now you're reducing the amount of space that she has available, but also the size of her bees will get smaller because the cell size is smaller. So when the space is smaller, so do the bees become smaller when they emerge. Okay, so what we're trying to do here is you need to open up your hives, brood box, brood the deep brood. Okay, for the people that because there's different terminology wherever you are. So where the deep frames are versus the shallow frames are, we want to go for the deep frames or brood frames. Okay, where the queen is. You open up your colonies, open up the hive, and you start taking out the frames there that are have got only honey in them, and B are very dark. If they're really, really dark brown and or black, the entire frame needs to be, not the frame itself, but the comb itself needs to be removed. Okay. And how to do this? Well, you just use a hive tool. You can use a knife and collect that stuff. Don't throw it away. Collect it in a bucket and leave a little strip at the top of the frame, just underneath the frame. Only needs to be about 1 centimeter long, or up until the first wire, if you're using frame wire in your frames. Okay, leave that little strip there, because what will happen is that then you don't need to replace any wax sheets or wax strips into the frame itself, because the bees will just continue building from where you've left this little strip at the top there, okay, of the comb. And if it's old and it's nasty or it's full of honey or whatever the case, it doesn't matter. Don't worry about that, because that little strip, they only use it really for honey and pollen. Okay, so they don't normally lay eggs in that area. So the main thing is to take out all that old comb and process it, because especially the dark comb is going to be hard, but it's going to be full of propolis. And the beauty about this, guys, is once you've processed it, if you've squeezed it, you've put it through what do you call not a petticoat, what do you call those things? Stockings. What do they call them? Old stockings. You put it through an old stocking and squeeze the hell out of it, you're going to get all the honey coming out, but none of the impurities, okay, if you don't have an extractor. But in this case, anyway, you don't want to use an extractor. You need to actually get the comb off the frame. Then the bees are going to build new comb, and that gives the queen new space to lay. So that's your annual inspection. That's what you have to do now, okay, of the next week. Bearing in mind that you don't have any cold fronts coming, that's what you're doing in the next week. Following that, you need to do feeding, okay? And the feeding right now, during the winter period, was a 2-to-1 ratio, okay? The reason being that's a kilogram of sugar and 2 liters of water, for example, or in whatever ratio of that you'd like, or a liter of water, 500 grams of sugar, okay? That was during the dearth period, okay? What we need to do now is we need to switch it up. We switch it up to the other version of feeding, and that is a 1-to-1 version. And this stimulates brood growth, okay? Whereas 2-to-1 stimulates, or it doesn't stimulate, it actually just maintains feeding. It maintains their glucose level, okay? Whereas the 1-to-1 is a brood stimulant. And what do I mean by that? Well, basically the queen will start laying like that. And that, you want that. Why do we want that? The reason why we want that is because if she starts laying now, if you've given her the space to lay, you've cleaned out the frames, the old frames. Remember, it's only frames with full of honey and no larvae or eggs on them, and frames with really dark coat, okay? Those are the ones you take out of the brood. If there's any eggs, or if there's a majority of eggs, anything bigger than this on a frame, leave it, okay? So you're taking those out, you're giving her space to lay, and then you're going to feed the bees at the same time. And the reason why you're doing that is because that gives her the ability to lay more than 300 eggs a day. And what ends up happening is you go to 500, you go to 800, you go to 1,500 eggs a day that she's going to be laying over the next week. Continue this process for the next 2 to 3 weeks, okay? And we'll come back after Tanya's had a bit more of a chat about what crops you should be looking at now as well. But I'll refer to that a little bit later in the thing. But the reason why we feed them is so that we can boost the laying process. And why we're doing that now is because the bees take like 18 days to get made from the day they get laid, okay? So if they lay now 300 eggs a day, those 300 bees emerge 18 days from now. When's that? Well, that's knocking on spring's door, okay? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to encourage the bees to be ready, just like Tanya's been talking about getting the seed beds ready and all that actually should have been done a while back. With bees, it's 1st of August, okay? 1st of August is when we start, because then you get 18 days. And from the 18th day, you're going to have a start overlapping of however many bees she was laying now, start emerging. And by the time they do then bees aren't foraging until they're about 30 days old, okay? Because they've got house chores to do. So when they come out, they become cleaners, they are wax builders, there are nannies and all that stuff first before they ever leave the hive, okay, to go foraging. So you've got to remember all of this in your processing and your planning, like Tanya was referring to earlier on. You have to have this as part of as a beekeeper and as a homesteader. It's vital to have a calendar, a planning calendar for the year. And this is one of the vital parts of the year to do this and to focus. Why are we doing this? As soon as stuff starts flowering in September, you don't want the bees to spend their time growing and laying so much. They will be doing that anyway, but you want to have a workforce. You want to have the hive at a top production rate already by the time the flowering comes, so that they take full advantage of the ability to create and harvest excess honey for you, for themselves and for them and for you, okay? That's why we're focusing on doing this right now. This is the plan. Instead of utilizing the time when the best flowers are out in spring to build a colony, we're taking the opportunity to build a colony now so that they can take advantage of the springtime later. And pretty much the same as what Tanya was talking about with regards to the prepping for the homesteading and growing. Okay, so cool. Over to you, Tanya. What's your guys' next step?
It's quite amazing. While you were talking, I was thinking the principles are so aligned, because we need to do things in the garden as well. Yes, and if we do the right things, then we will get a huge crop. Just as if when you're doing the right things with beekeeping, you will get lots of new bees and lots of honey. And I just want to say hi to Emil's little daughter there. Hi. Anyway, all right. There were some questions. Patient says, I'm in Newfoundland, Pretoria. I really need to know what to plant. Well, for spring, there's so many things you can plant. Our crucifers, our cabbage families are past now. We shouldn't concentrate on that anymore. So we're moving on to the tomatoes and the beans and the pumpkins, things like that. And so it might, as I said, might be a little bit early still for things that are frost sensitive. If you've got frost in your area, patients, just look out for that and maybe protect them. But I don't know if you've seen, I mean, before the season even starts, you see people next to all these little vendors next to the street have got lovely tomatoes and lovely beans, and you're thinking, but I've only planted mine, what's happening? And that's this whole thing of start early. If you start early, and you protect them, then you've got these crops much quicker. And a good thing about starting early is you kind of, you skip some of the pests, because the pests only come later when it's a bit warmer. So the ideal is if you have like a little greenhouse or stuff to start your seedlings in, etc., if you're in a very cold area still. But I would look at, to answer your question, looking at planting my beans and my tomatoes. What else? There's so many things that you can plant for summer. I've planted carrots today, and I'm going to plant beetroot and spinach, etc. Warwick, what would you recommend planting now for the bees, like basil? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a cool question as well, and really important. So fast stuff that can grow now: sunflowers. If you plant that, sunflowers, sweet basil.
Yes.
I think we've spoken about rosemary and lavender before, but they're not that fast, obviously. But things like, you know, even things like watermelon, pumpkin, any one of these will, they benefit from the bees pollinating them. They get bigger yield, you get more yield as well, more production out of stuff, more stuff to harvest. And they flower fairly quick, you know, they flower fairly quickly. What's going to be flowering, so what's cropped now, what the crops are now basically is you need to be focusing on things like the aloes if you're in the Highveld area. There'll be proteas in the Western Cape, for example. Lucernes are now, if it's allowed to go to flower, but the honey production depends on the pH balance of the soil with lucerne, funny enough. The more balanced it is, I think it needs to be more alkaline, actually, the better the honey production. What else? Citrus is coming up as well.
In my garden, we've got borage coming up again, and the bees
borage is a good one too.
Borage, and borage is so hardy. It just
keeps going and giving.
Growing. Yes, and so many flowers. And you know what's nice about the flowers? The bees use them, but there's so many that you can go into the garden and you pick it for salads. And once you're finished cutting up your salad, you just put it on top, and it's so beautiful. You can eat it. It's delicious. Yes. So borage is a good one for me. And also on this question, what should we plant now? We do not have to have everything in our head. I've got a fantastic booklet, so hope you can see it. Take root. Let's just see where, there we go. Take root and grow. Now, the writer of this book is Susan Torrance, and she's an avid gardener and writer. So this book, for instance, I can just tell you about some of the topics. There's composting in here. There is worm farms, how to make your own worm farms. There's a plan. There's germination charts. We've got in here what to do, what month. There's like a planting calendar or preparation calendar, what you should be doing when. So everything does not have to be in your head. You can just take a book that's a good resource like this one, and it's got all the vegetables that you can plant as well. And it tells you when to plant these vegetables, etc. And you can use a lovely resource like this and just read up, and it will give you all the answers. Now, this book is available online. I checked it out just now. It's cheapest at Loot at the moment. Takelot's got it too, but it's more expensive. So, but it's definitely a resource I will recommend for especially a new gardener and even an experienced gardener, because we all forget things or not sure about 100%, so we can look it up. So don't be scared to use a resource. The resources are there for a reason. All right, so we've got, cool. Let's check what questions we have there.
I'm trying to do that as we speak. Oh.
Are you doing it? I see there's a question from Anthony. Not sure whether it is out of scope of this talk, but can you discuss some do's and don'ts on harvesting bees from other sites? Can we discuss that one now?
Getting bees? Was that a question?
It's from do's and don'ts to do's and don'ts to harvest bees. I suppose it's from a tree or for somebody's house or whatever. Is it something we can discuss now?
I didn't actually see that question, but cool. First time, but can you discuss? Oh, there it is. Yeah, that's from Anthony. Cool, Anthony. Good question. All right. Yeah. So that is something we were going to talk about. So it's great timing. Effectively. So that's the other thing. Now the people that don't have bees and want to have bees. All right. This is what you need. You need a catch box or catch boxes. Okay. And these are small versions of a big hive, of a normal Langstroth hive. Now catch boxes come in all shapes and sizes. Well, not necessarily sizes. They come in different types. You get plastic ones, you get wooden ones. I prefer the wooden ones, but plastic ones are probably a little bit cheaper, but not by much, because the frames are what are actually costing you the most amount of money, okay? But ideally what we want to be doing, guys, is you need to have catch boxes. If you can, and if you don't already have hives, the best thing to do is to get hold of, try and buy old hives, old colonies, not old colonies, old catch boxes from a retiree, or from somebody who's willing to give you one or two, not give you, but sell you one or two older ones that are maybe dilapidated and are not in such great condition. And the reason being, don't worry about the condition. The bees don't really worry about the condition as long as it's not too holy, okay? what the bees want is they want something that smells like home. It's the same as when, if you know, the old adage, the old story about, you know, if you're wanting to sell a house, make sure that the oven's on and that you've got baked goods in there, okay? Because it smells like home, smells like where you want to be, like there's lack of cooking going on. So what happens? People are more likely to buy that place or make an offer on that place because it feels more like home. And then that's what we're trying to do with bees. So, hey, how do we get bees? You need a catch box, or catch boxes. I'd say at least 2. You need lures, or attractants. And how do we do that? Well, there's a variety of different ways of doing that. As I've just alluded to, basically, is that you use an old catch box. If you don't have that access, if you're already a beekeeper, you're going to have access to this old comb that we've just removed anyway from our maintenance that we've done, and you're going to use that. Once you've squeezed it all out in a stocking, okay, or in a wine press, a honey press, which we have at a Beware shop in Centurion, we have wine presses, which is using manual labor to squish basically all the comb and get the honey and stuff out. Once the honey's out, you don't ever throw away the wax, because you can render that into candles, into lotions and creams, but you can also reuse it for lures, okay, because it smells like home. You can melt it with a bit of turpentine or some other kind of alcohol, and then you can paint it on the inside of your empty catch boxes, your new catch boxes, for example. Alternatively, you just literally put pieces in there. That's also fine, because with the heat coming now during this period of the year, or any time going forward, it is going to slightly melt and stuff in there during the heat of the day, and that pheromone and that smell is going to be like a welcome mat. It's going to be like going to Las Vegas for a gambler, okay? It's going to be like, bring me home, okay? Bring me the bakery in my home when I'm looking to buy, right? So catching bees is that you need catch boxes, you need lures. We sell lemongrass oil at our shop in Centurion, and we sell swarm lures that have been field and lab tested with a 70% tracking colony luring ability. But if you have an existing colony or an existing apiary and your bees are looking to split, okay, at this period of time, it's also another reason why we do maintenance, because when bees get to the point where they cannot lay anymore, guess what happens? Okay, the queen decides, well, there's no more space for me here, I need to expand. And when she decides that, she tells the workers to create new queens. Those new queens then when they're ready, they leave the colony, or she leaves the colony before they do. Okay, and now what happens is you ended up having 30,000 bees in your colony, and now you only have 20,000 bees in your colony, and 10,000 bees have moved off with a new queen. So our swarm lure specifically is being developed for 90% accuracy in being able to trap or catch or attract any splitting colony or swarm from a parent colony within a 50-meter radius of that originating colony. Okay, so it's vital that you guys get hold of our swarm lure at the shop, and in addition to that, you can use lemongrass oil, or you can use the propolis and or old comb mix that I've just explained to you guys earlier on. So those are some of the things that I discuss on my online course, on my online workshop, and face-to-face workshops we do in Midrand. But if you guys want to join our online one, then we'll give you references at the end. But effectively, so you need lures, you need a place. Where do you put the hives? Where do you put the catch boxes, the empty boxes, to lure the colonies, to lure these tracking swarms? Okay, the number one place to put them is where bees are already. Go figure. If they are already foraging on a crop, sunflower, aloes, lucerne is the big one right now. Citrus is coming up. If you have any access to those, blue gums, there are some winter blue gums that flower now. If you've got fields of borage, sweet basil, blueberries are a good one, because they're blueberries. Interestingly enough, there are multiple varieties that flower over this period of time. Okay, so if you have access to a blueberry farm near you, there are opportunities for pollination contracts there where you actually get paid. Now, remember, when you're doing pollination, you're not expected to get honey, because you overpopulate the area in any kind of form of commercial pollination contract. You're not expecting to get any, any honey, and that's why you get compensated in a pollination service. Okay, you get paid for the pollination service, because you're going to overpopulate. You're going to put more hives per hectare than the bees will get honey out. Okay, That's why you get paid. You're going to potentially lose up to 10% of your colonies because of this as well. And you're going to have to feed them on a regular basis, rotate them. And that's a subject for another day. But the point is that blueberries right now are a pretty cool thing to get in touch with if you can.
Brilliant.
So place your hives, your catch boxes 1.5 meters up. The reason being is that you end up getting stronger colonies being higher up and preferring elevated positions to take a hold in than weaker colonies that will fly. And this has been proven by a Canadian guy, a really well-known Canadian guy, through experiments, also been beekeeping for over 20 years. And it's an old trick that I learned from him when I met him. I actually met him when I was in Ukraine in 2013. We had a long chat about Canadian bees and almond pollination, because he takes about 3,000 colonies of the almonds every year in the States, in California. So that's one of his things that he does. And I was fascinated by that because it's an up and coming crop in South Africa, actually, commercial crop, almonds growing in South Africa, believe it or not, because right now about 97% of the world's almonds come from California. Okay. So, but South Africa has been, there are a number of people that are testing that out, and they're testing it as a crop. So it's an up and coming crop in South Africa and quite lucrative, as you can imagine. And bees and almonds go hand in hand. Without bees, there's no almonds. There will be 0 almonds in the world without bees. Okay. So this is why there are groups of guys in America that are, they take 20,000 colonies down to the orchards on almonds in California, and it's not enough. They're short every year. So if anybody wants to take up beekeeping full-time commercially, go to America. You can get a job there and work with them over the almond season if you want. And I'm busy on a project where I'm actually doing collaborations with the guys in America to connect South African beekeepers who want to go and do migratory work there in California over the period and get paid for that. So watch out space for that as well coming up. But I think are there any other questions around that?
There was some questions. I think we need to look at the time, Warwick. So I think we could take 2 more questions. There's one question from Jennifer. She's asking from a technical perspective on advice on feeding. She said the internet has contradictory information. I know we've spoken about feeding the bees quite a lot, but she's asking very specifically. So I don't know if you can give us some more insight on that.
Okay.
As I read the question, do you see it?
Where was that?
Please give me some advice on how to feed from a technical perspective. The internet has contradictory information, e.g. feeding inside the hive.
Inside the hive. Okay. So at the shop, we in Centurion, okay, we supply an internal feeder. It's an internal container. You take 2 of the frames out, you put our big container inside the hive. But once you do that, obviously they are ribbed on the inside so that if a bee does fall in, they're able to crawl out. But we do add a couple of extra things into that. So things like you can put cork in there, you can put sticks, you can put anything that's going to sort of float so the bees can grab onto it if they do fall in, and they can grab onto it and get out. Okay. Typically, it used to be my modus operandi, my primary way of feeding bees, but I've since changed. I've switched over to external feeding once I discovered the cool product that you can get a little external feeder that literally slides into the entrance of your hive. And you can have a bottle on the outside, a container on the outside, where first of all, visually, you can see how quickly it's being used and then refill it if you need to. And secondly, the chances of a bee drowning in that is 0. Okay, so we stock both of these items in our shop in Midrand. We ship in Centurion rather, and we ship throughout nationally, and we ship across borders to Zimbabwe, Namibia, Zambia, Mozambique, Botswana, and Zim at the moment, and growing. So basically, anybody who's looking for that stuff, contact us on our phone number and on the website. I'll post that also in the group too. If you're interested in that, you can speak to us about exporting and all that sort of thing, because we do already have an existing database of people that are working with us, and we are growing that as well as we go forward. I'm not sure technically if there's anything else. How often, frequency, maybe. I mean, as I said, I do discuss a lot of this stuff in depth on my online course, but frequency is literally how much are the bees eating. So the beauty of this is that, if you're using an external feeder, you can see how quickly it's going to go, and literally a 1 liter container will be done by the end of the day. Yeah. So so is that right? Well, it's right for the bees at the time. But what I would recommend, though, is that you don't want to continue feeding the bees forever, because what's going to end up happening then is that at some point you are going to have a mixing of your honey with sugar water. And we don't want that. We don't want to introduce any excess sugar water, something that's not actually nectar, into your storage of honey, because then you're not getting real honey, are you? So because that's what will happen, is if you do continue to feed the bees and they find that they have an excess, they will convert the honey and the sugar at the same time in the same space, which we don't want to have them do that. So I would only feed now until for the next sort of 18 days at the most, and then stop. That's it, done.
Then Jennifer also just said something about attracting robber bees. I think if you're using the internal feeder, then you will eliminate that with the robber bees, if I'm not correct, I've mistaken, Warwick. As far as Leone's question is concerned, she's in Malmesbury with the canolas flowering. I don't know if you were on the call in the beginning, Leone. We did address when to open, how to open, and what to look out for. So maybe you can watch the re-recording or the recording of this afterwards. Is there any other questions that anybody has with regards to preparation for the bees and for your spring garden that anybody would like to ask and we can address?
I'd like to ask a question, please.
Yes, Trevor.
What is the best temperature that one should open a hive? So I'm in Johannesburg. It's, for instance, now it's a pretty cold day today. So today wouldn't be a good day. But what temperature is a guideline for one to open up a hive?
Well, look, obviously the internal climate of a hive is 36 degrees, funny enough, very close to our body temperatures. And the more we change that when we're opening colonies right now, the worse for the bees, especially eggs, because they dry very quickly and they are at risk of freezing, okay, and or getting too cold, overexposure basically, and then they can die or get damaged and injured. So what we don't want to do is, that's why I said, don't open your colonies earlier on. I said, don't open your colonies when it gets too cold. What kind of temperature are we talking about? Well, I think, bees stop flying. They can't fly once it gets below 9 degrees. That gives us an indication. I would say you want to be at least in the range of about 16 degrees when you do this. So this kind of maintenance, ideally, I'd say from about 15, 16 degrees, I would probably do it during the day while most of the foragers are out of the hive and in the field. But be fairly quickly about it. It's not something that's supposed to take you an hour long per hive. This literally should be a blitz kind of. Obviously, you need to be don't be overactive in any of your beekeeping, but you need to be pretty focused. Know what you need to be doing. Having your bucket ready for container to take the cut out comb. Make sure you got a lid for that. And then when you open, do your smoking, that should be about 2 to 4 minutes before you open the hive, take the super off, put it on the side, get into the brood box, check each frame quickly. And I mean, that shouldn't be taking you more than a minute of frames, way above time that you require for that. Okay. But if you are a beginner, it might take you a bit of time to get the frames out, break the proper seals, all that sort of stuff. So I'm allowing for that there, but I wouldn't say more than a 5-minute inspection here. It should be a tops 10-minute inspection per hive. Okay. Hopefully that, and then looking at 7. Yeah. And then another thing, I think canola was in the Western Cape, because I've never farmed down in the Western Cape. So canola is a good one, winter crop. I think it might have just finished now, or it might, something like that. So yeah. Going forward though, citrus, pretty much citrus, apples. Apples are a good crop for the bees, and bees are a good crop for apples, good pollinators for apples. What else was there? The citrus, lychee is going to be coming up. Anything to do with pumpkins. Grenadillas are amazing, guys, by the way. You can get hold of grenadilla. Lemons are on annual. So lemons flower throughout the year. If you can get hold of lemons as a crop, it's a phenomenal crop to have. I've got an apiary site in Nelspruit, and it's about a 32-hectare spot there, and we have honey all year round, and they have bumper. We've been able to prove that they've been able to get at least 25 to 30% more crop than they've ever had before the bees came along, even in their best year. So lemons are a phenomenal one if you can get hold of those, okay, coming up as crops to be. But eucalyptus as well is a big one. Aloes are a huge one right now. Aloes are flowering. Aloe Daviana is the big one in the Highveld area, okay? Just to be quick, if you are going to put hives out on Aloe Daviana, be aware of the Cape bee, the Capensis bee, which is a big problem at the moment, okay? And it had not just at the moment, but for the last 20 to 25 years, but especially over the last sort of 5 to 10 years. Why am I saying this? The Cape bee, we have spoken about this earlier on in the previous talk briefly, but the Cape bee is an invader bee in the northern part of South Africa, the northern half of South Africa, okay? We've got 2 separate subspecies of bees. One's the Cape bee, which tells you where it's from, pretty much Eastern Cape, Western Cape. And then we've got the Highveld bee, which is obviously above that line. Okay. And what happens is that they work the same. They're both bees, they both collect honey, they both sting, all that sort of stuff. There's only one particular difference, and that is that the worker bee can lay both male and female eggs, the only honeybee of its kind that can do this. Okay. Very unique to South Africa and to the world. And this has led to a problem because people have brought that Cape bee above that line without knowing probably that they weren't supposed to do this, and it is illegal to do that. Please make sure if you're pollinating or moving your bees at this time, which you probably should be doing as well as part of your next step, is that you need to be planning on where you're going to be taking your bees next in order to get the best kind of harvest for your honey and for them as well, okay, on crops that are flowering in the next couple of weeks, okay. But please make sure that you check on the line of where the Cape bee is and where the Cape bee area starts and ends, and where the Highveld bee starts and ends. Because if you go over that borderline, you're going to add to the Capensis problem now, and it is illegal for you to do that. Okay, so you can't take Highveld. You can, if you like, take Highveld bees further down, but the problem is they'll be bred out, and that's what's happening now. Is that the Cape bee has moved into the Highveld area, and is now creating hybrids and or outbreeding our Highveld bee. Okay, which is a biological catastrophe. Okay, because of how people have been irresponsible. So in taking your bees to the aloes, just in closing, taking your bees to the aloes, just be aware that you should not put more than 1 super on that colony, because it is prevalent at the Aloe Daviana that the Cape bee is likely to get into your Highveld bee colonies and cause an issue for you. But on the other hand, the Aloe Daviana is the best indigenous plant in the country right now. It's a 4 and 4, 4 and 3 on nectar quality and pollen quality, okay, as a source right now for the bees. It's like rocket fuel for bees at this point in time. And not only is it rocket fuel in terms of for breeding and for energy and for food and everything, but it actually creates an aggressive state in the bees. It's literally like steroids. So if you're trying to work with your bees right now and they're on aloes, good luck to you. You need 2 bee suits on it to go work with them, okay? Because they go ballistic. Literally, I would leave them alone from now. If you're on aloes, leave them alone until the aloes stop flowering. Okay, if you haven't done your maintenance or anything like that now and they're on aloes, leave them be. Let them be, excuse the pun. And don't put more than 2 supers. In fact, I would only keep it to 1 super. And I would make sure that you're going to collect and maintain them, at least maintain the supers, and frequently exchange them out. Okay, hopefully that's giving you a little bit more insight there.
Brilliant, thank you. I saw Uncle Jock Fenter having a good laugh at the 2 bee suits.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're running out of time, so I've written there where you can send your questions. Warwick, if you want to, you can still write your email address if somebody want to contact you with another question related to this topic. Great. I think we need to wrap it up, and guys, good luck with all the preparations for spring. It's such an exciting time, and come share your experiences with us on self-sufficient homesteading and gardening on Facebook. We'd love to see your gardens, we'd love to see your bees, and what you are doing, and just come share your excitement for this whole issue, this homesteading and bee topic, because if you're excited about it, other people will get excited about this sort of questions, and we can all help each other to build a greater homestead with our bees and our crops. All right, guys, thank you very much.
Oh, before we finish, I know you shared a book, Tanya. Here's the beekeeping book I wanted to share.
Oh yes,
can I get it in there.
The Blue Bible.
There it is. Okay, beekeeping in South Africa, guys. We have that book available at our Centurion shop. We ship it all over the world, actually, because it literally is, as Tanya was saying, it's the Bible of beekeeping. Yeah, that's it, Anthony. Well done. Nice one. So currently the price is $4.50 for that, plus shipping. Okay, but literally, if you wanted to know, it's also got all the, it's got 2 amazing chapters in there with regards to what crops, trees, plants, shrubs, and weeds grow in South Africa for bees, and then when they flower, and what their nectar quality is and what their pollen quality is. And believe it or not, even some honeydew is also used as well by bees. And that comes from the sugarcane, for example, and maize. So there's lots of things that we talk about in terms of this on our online course and our face-to-face courses, but there are the amazing 2 chapters of, and also what's cool is that it gives you the number of hives per hectare that you should be using if you are prepared to go into pollination and offer contracts to people as a business commercially. So that's also pretty phenomenal. So we talk about this on our online courses and stuff, but it is in the book if you want to refer to the book on its own. Cool.
Hi, Warwick. I don't know if you can hear me. It's Paul here from Cape Town.
Paul, how's it, man? Yeah.
Hi, sorry, just to interject quickly, just beware, I am following you guys actually quite a lot online and stuff, but obviously you're up in the Transvaal down here.
Yeah, we are.
Have you got any suppliers down here where we can actually source product?
We do. We have Beware Cape Town, and it's Jacques, who's also cool. He's also got his own, he's now under his own brand as well, Barben Bees. Jacques Barben is in Frederhoek Street.
Okay.
Just type that for us, Warwick, if you don't mind. Type it up.
I will type that up.
Brilliant.
Beware Cape Town, but and yeah, you can get hold of him there. But he also does courses down there too. He also does courses as well. And we've been working.
Great. I used to do beekeeping many years ago in Zimbabwe and in the old days and stuff. We had about 15 to 20 odd hives, but I'm just up again here in Cape Town now. So, looking to source a lot of little items and stuff. And I will take your blue book from you as well. So
excellent. Yeah, champion, man. Listen, obviously you're going to be dealing with the KP down there. But there's nothing wrong with dealing with the KP down there because it's in its home ground. So that's awesome. And you've got the beauty of the proteas available. You've got the canola available. You've got the apples available. You've got onions, by the way, is a good pollination opportunity for anybody who is creating seeds, which is interesting as well, Tanya, for you guys, for the homesteaders, is that anybody who wants to make seeds for onions and I think garlic, if anybody's growing any of those in particular, you get a phenomenal yield difference on the production of the seeds for onions.
That's really good to know.
Yeah. So obviously you're not.
Dania, we have a lot of times, but also fynbos down in the Cape. So we do take a lot of
crops
for granted. Yeah.
Fynbos and the proteas,
honey is delicious. I grew up with it.
Yeah. What's that sugar? Is it called a sugar bush? What's it called?
Yes, it is a sugar bush. Yeah.
Sugar bush. Yeah, it is phenomenal honey as well.
You find all the bee eaters and birds and everything else all over them as well.
Yeah. The bushu. It's called bushu, hey, otherwise known.
Yeah, buku, buku plant. I've got a buku plant in my garden here, and it's just inundated with bees, and when it flowers, it's the most amazing tree. So
now I've really been quite keen to get somebody, Mike. I think he's the guy who works with with ARC or something like that, and they've got potentially access to a lab. And I've been asking him, man, can't you get buku tested? Because I reckon there's a potential for buku and a couple of other of our local honeys to compete with Manuka.
Yeah,
the problem is getting somebody willing to put money where their mouth is, and then
you should talk to Kirstenbosch Gardens. Kirstenbosch themselves have got a development center there, and they do all those flowers. And in fact, that's where we buy a lot of our plants for home here. We go down there, and of course we buy whatever the bees are on. That's what gets put into our garden. So Kirstenbosch is an amazing source for those kind of things. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks very much to you and Tanya for fantastic sessions.
If anybody wants to stay on longer, we can. If you like, Tanya, I don't mind staying on a little bit longer, but I know we've caught up with our hour now. I'm happy to try and answer some more of those questions just quickly if you want. I mean, do you want to?
We can wrap up for the people that want to go off. They're welcome to leave. And
very much,
it's wonderful seeing everybody, and it's great seeing Robert, and it's great seeing Emil. And Rensha, Rensha's still here. It's lovely having you here as well. All right, but anybody, hey, who's waving? Dikon, Norma, there we go.
And Anthony.
All right, so everybody that wants to leave can leave, and the rest that still got some questions, yes, we're on, waiting for you.
Cool.
Tanya and Warwick, can you hear me?
Yes, Anthony, hi.
I just want to, elaborate further on those do's and don'ts of beekeeping. I'll tell you, I had an experience yesterday. Earlier in the week, my brother phoned me and said he's got these bees that have invaded his borehole. And I said, well, I can go and smoke them out and put them in and capture them for him. And this is where the do's and don'ts come. I arrived there and took a look at his borehole, and it was covered by a dog kennel, one of these dog kennels that is about 2 foot high, 2 foot wide, and about 3 foot long. Anyway, when I turned this over, the dog kennel was solid bees. And I'd arrived with one brood box and a big Tupperware that I keep my smoker, etc. in. So after about an hour, I'd tied in about 9 frames of comb, and it was getting dark, but I still have a pile that I had no option to do other than to leave it under the table that I'd put the hive on, and I've left it. Now, the weather yesterday wasn't that cold, and I haven't been back to my brother's house because I live in Joburg, or in further south. He lives in Olivedale. What should I have done? Maybe knowing what the weather was going to be like the following day, I should have done nothing, but he's got no water in his house, so we had to get to the borehole. So is that colony at risk now, in the sense that I've really upset them, and I captured as many bees as I could and put them into the brood box with as much comb as I could find, or much comb as I could. But if I go there this afternoon, what do you think my chances are?
Yeah, look, it's a difficult one. Whenever doing bee removals or bee relocations. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's a difficult one. I did my first 18 months of beekeeping was largely involved in bee removals. I learned so much when I was doing that, and also was able to earn and fund my growing in the beekeeping business itself, and also beekeeping, because it costs money to buy the hives, etc., and equipment, etc. So yeah, bee removals is a bit of a tough one, and that sounds like it's a big colony. Did you say you've moved them already?
No, I extracted them out of the dog kennel, and I filled a full brood box with 9 frames, and the balance I just left on a little block and in close proximity to the original location. So the hive is right next to where the guys were. It's on a table about 1.5 meters high. The bees were on the top of the borehole, which is obviously on the ground, and the excess comb is on a little table very close by as well.
All right. Ideally, all of the comb that's in the dog box, you should move over. If you have to double brood, or you could split them. So you take 2 separate brood chambers with floors and lids, and split it across accordingly. Okay. Obviously, what you're going to end up having is some of the, to one side you're going to have brood, you're going to have comb rather that is only honey. Obviously, you don't want to put only honey into one brood box, or you could harvest that if you wanted to. In fact, I would have probably have kept that for myself. Majority of any honey comb, you should have put in a bucket and harvested that. Your brother could have had it, you could have had it, family, whatever, split it amongst you, etc. The main thing would have been to keep the brood. Anything with eggs in it, sealed brood, eggs, anything like that should have been kept in a brood box, which I think you've probably done from the sound of things. And if it means that you have to fill up 2 brood boxes, or a brood box and a catch box with that, then do that. The main thing really is that a lot of the bees, especially probably the queen, is still back in a dog box. she's probably remained. She stays with the ship, you know.
Well, I took pretty much all of the comb out of the dog box. There wasn't much left.
That doesn't matter.
She'll go back.
If she wasn't taken over into the brood chamber originally anyway, she would still be there in the dog box. And if she was taken over into the brood box, the likelihood of her returning, because you've left them so close together, the likelihood of her trying to go back to the original box is probably quite high, including a lot of the foragers will go back as well. Anybody that, you know, when doing a bee removal like this, it's ideal. The ideal situation is to remove the original thing from the area. And so what you've done is almost there. You're 75% there. That you put a new box next to the old box, but you didn't remove the old box. So that is a little bit of a dilemma. What I would have done is remove the old box, emptied everything, given it a good shake in front of the other box, in front of your actual brood box, given it all a good shake, cleaned out everything that was in there and moved it away, at least for a couple of days, and then leave the new brood box there in place, because that would work as a beacon for them to return to. And then your chances of the queen being either in your box or in the dog box there would be no risk. She would have most likely, I mean, there's a 95% chance that she would have now been in the actual brood box. So what can happen now, right, is that there is the risk that the queen's in the dog box still. And if that's the case, you need to do this process. You need to go there, you clean out whatever else is left in there. You need to shake the hell out of it. Use a brush gently to get all the bees. What I would do is actually, when you take the lid off of the brood box, or you don't have to take it off actually, I wouldn't take it off. I would use a spare brood box lid or a piece of cardboard or some kind of thing to use a platform at the front entrance. Remove the entrance blocker if you've got one. Put the thingy, a lid or a piece of cardboard or whatever as a platform there at the front entrance, and then you're going to shake this dog box, the hell out of this dog box. So most of the stuff falls to the ground. When it falls to the ground, it's going to fall onto this platform, the spare lid, and from there they're going to smell that there is home in this other box in front of them, and they will go inside there. And if the queen isn't already in there, the likelihood is that she'll fall and she'll run in with the rest of the colony. And keep an eye out for her, okay? And if she is already in the box, the bees will automatically walk into the box. You'll see them. They all go into like a line, and they'll literally march. They do the bee march, and they march into the brood box that you put there, okay? But then please do remove the dog box, and then give it a proper wash, because otherwise it's going to act like an old hive, and a new colony is going to move in there. And how to do that is wash it with Jay's fluid and water. 50-50 mix of Jay's fluid and water. And if there isn't going to be any dogs living in that box, you know, the likelihood of colonies moving back in there now shortly is probably quite high actually. But using the Jay's fluid and water, or bleach and water, is what Jay's fluid is, 50-50 mix there is temporary. It's not going to be forever,
okay? Great.
Remember, dog sense of smell is like 5 times stronger than ours. A bee's sense of smell is about 30 times stronger than a dog's. So this is why whenever on a bee removal, you have a lot of repeat business actually, because if it's not done properly, even by pest controllers, especially by pest controllers, because they think terminating the colony is going to do the job. But actually, and then people think that, oh, the bees have come back the following year and the pest controller didn't do their work, or the bee remover didn't do their work. No, a new colony that's just smelt the old one where it was, and they moved back in. So if precautions aren't made and preparations aren't made for that colony, for that old smell scent to be taken away, you're just going to get a new colony moving in every time. Good question. Tanya, pleasure. Good luck.
Warwick, sorry, me down here in Cape Town again. Just what is the thought pattern on putting the queen excluder on the bottom of the hive when you transferred a swarm like that? In the old days, we used to put it to prevent the queen from leaving and keep it locked up. Is that still the done thing?
I haven't done that in ages, because all of my hives are designed so that the floor is not detachable from the brood. It just makes life a lot easier. But yeah, when I used to do the bee removals, I used to do exactly that. I would have a queen excluder between the floor. It's specialized, well, I call them specialized because I don't like the floor being detached from the brood. But I used to use them in the old days when I used to do a lot of bee removals for 18 months.
Okay.
Do that queen excluder in the middle. it does allow the queen, it keeps the queen in place for sure. But don't do it for too long, man. She only needs a couple of weeks, and as long as you've moved them away and you've made them feel comfortable, you can use elastics, by the way. Elastic bands are pretty cool, and or string to keep the comb in place on the frames when you've cut them out. Put them on. Make sure you move it back and forth on the wire, and then use elastic bands. 2 elastic bands. The 5 Rand coin size elastic bands should be perfect. You need 2 of those, maybe 3 sometimes. And what happens? You don't even have to take them off. The bees will eat them. They'll eat them off once they've reattached the comb. So they're pretty smart that way. If you don't have elastic bands, you just use string. Those you're going to have to cut. But yeah, I've used you can use an entrance. You can take a queen excluder. This is quite cool. You can take a queen excluder and actually cut it. You know, you're going to need to have some serious cable tie cutters kind of thing, but you can bolt cutters, but you can cut the queen excluder into stretches and then put that over the front of the entrance. So you take 1 queen excluder and you can turn that into 10, probably around 10 to 15 queen excluder blockers at the front. You can do that. We do sell them. We do sell them like that, but you could make your own, you know. We sell our own, but you can make your own because you.
Okay, great.
Yeah, great question. Okay, anything else? Anything for Tanya, guys? On the growing side, homesteaders, seeds to plant. I really like the idea, Tanya, of your tomatoes. 36, 35, 35. That is it. I remember we spoke about this because I was like, 36 all gold tomatoes make up all gold tomato sauce in a box.
I'll just put another variety in.
So, but you got 35. That's what I remembered. So it's like, cool.
Yes.
Nice one.
We're very excited about that.
Yeah, I'm excited for you too, man. You know, and you must get bees. When are you going to get bees? Because bees with tomatoes,
I've got bees.
Bigger tomatoes, going to get, okay, cool.
I've got a really small little, what do you call them? Swarm. But they just, I never knew a bee cannot fly below 9 degrees Celsius. I never knew that. That was really something interesting for me today. And now I know why they just sit huddled together in this little hive. Oh, yeah, no, man.
That's what they use most of their energy for now, you know, during the winter period, cold front. Keeping warm, yeah.
I hope they stay because the food's going to come. It's been a really cold winter and a lot of our plants died of frost. So there's nothing for them.
You could do the feeding thing, eh? Do a feeding station for them.
Yeah.
Like we've spoken about before. But I think somebody's question actually on the robbing side of things, I think somebody did actually have a question on that. So yeah, it's one of the reasons why I don't feed, and we have chatted about this in previous Zoom talks, is that make sure if you're feeding externally, you don't feed anywhere near your bees unless it's in the external feeder container system we've got from Beware in the shop. Make sure you're feeding at a water station that's at least 10 meters away from any colonies. Otherwise, you can introduce robbing. That does happen with bees, unfortunately.
Okay, great. Well, I think we've had a really, really good session. And if there's no more questions, then we can wrap it up. And then we'll see everybody next week again.
Okay, so sorry guys, sorry. Yes, it's Albert here. Obviously, I know we're running out of time. I started beekeeping two years ago. I've got 2 hives at the back of my yard here in Rhodocrans in West Rand. I just want to check with you guys. Obviously, you guys do only honey bees, the ones that sting. You know, anyone doing stingless bees in Africa, in South Africa specifically?
Anything to deal with bee stings? Yeah, bicarbonate soda. You can rub that or vinegar on.
No, I'm sorry. I'm referring to stingless bees.
Oh, stingless bees. Beg your pardon.
Yes.
No, we don't have any stingless bees.
Okay.
Honeybees, that is.
Capensis is the closest, huh?
No, it stings. Capensis stings, eh? Capensis is just like any other honeybee. But we don't have, as far as I'm aware, we don't have any stingless bees in South Africa. Aside from, that's honeybees, I mean. We do have carpenter bees. But interestingly enough, a lot of people talk, you know, they ask me about, oh, what about bumblebees? And we don't have bumblebees in South Africa. We've got all kinds of other bees. We've got ground bees. We've got, you know, carpenter bees. We've got mason bees. We've got quite a variety of other bees that aren't making honey. But funny enough, we don't actually have bumblebees. so yeah, it's interesting because bumblebees are actually being used in Europe now and in America for things like blueberry pollination and a couple of other things where they're a bit more of a specialist, and they can be used because they're stingless. They can be used inside tunnels and actual greenhouses and stuff like that. And they're phenomenal little pollinators too. So there are companies that have actually met companies in Ukraine in 2013 that are actually, they've made a business out of this where they actually breed and produce and supply bumblebee colonies to people that are pollinating inside greenhouses and tunnels where, it has to be a closed environment. Now, obviously, because they can't sting, makes it a much more viable choice than using bees that will sting in a closed environment. They are likely to sting and possibly even swarm. Yeah, good question. But yeah, I don't know. Do you guys have stingless bees, Albert?
No, not at the moment. Look, I'm originally from Zim, and I remember I grew up in the rural areas where we had like these small stingless bees that stick around in tree trunks. But I see there is a huge drive, like in Australia at the moment. So with that same stingless bee, like it's a very small, tiny bee, but their colonies are very small as well. Yeah. So I thought maybe there's guys that are doing it here in South Africa, but it looks like more honeybees.
The stingless bees, as far as I know, we don't have any in South Africa anyway. I mean, you've spoken about Zim, but I know Australia's got stingless bees. A lot of the Indonesia, India, that kind of area, they've got stingless bees. Mm-hmm. They've even, and Australia's, interestingly enough, they've got an ant. They've got a honey ant. I don't think it's strictly honey, but it's a nectar-based. It's a phenomenal insect to see because they actually sacrifice themselves when they're harvesting and storing the honey, the nectar. And there's whole colonies where they hang, obviously, and their abdomens grow and grow and grow to a point where they look like little bowls almost. It's amazing to see. YouTube that, it's pretty a phenomenal thing to see. But yeah, the Aborigines used to obviously harvest them.
It's fantastic.
But
thanks so much. Thanks so much for the work that you guys are doing as well. I mean, I order my supplies from you guys. I think I bought my hives from you guys some time ago.
Okay, awesome. Great, man. Thanks.
So I thought I should jump on this. This is my first time joining in. But thanks for the effort and thanks for everything that you guys are doing. Amazing thing.
Thanks for joining us, Albert. Man.
It's great to have you guys on board.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be doing this as well.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Tanya.
Yeah. Synergy for
Thank you, Paul.
Because we're actually learning a lot. We're doing a lot of cross-pollination, squeeze the fun between Tanya and myself with regards to the gardening, self-sustaining work and stuff. And so it's been really cool.
Yeah, I'd like to at some stage again get into a discussion with you about aquaponics. I don't know if you've ever studied aquaponics. If you do it, it's a perfect way for growing seeds very fast. It's done in a granite environment. It's not done in sand. I have a system running where we were running it through tilapia fish, and it's another one of those projects which could work very well with beekeeping as well. It's fantastic in terms of tomato seeds, and anything with a leaf just grows like a weed. That's the most amazing thing to have in there, especially if you link it with tilapia fish.
Okay, well, we can do a talk on that one time and bring you in and some more experts on that, and we can have a great chat about that.
Let's do that. Yeah, that sounds phenomenal.
Okay, so keep watching the page for new topics.
Who's that's talking?
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Is it Paul that's
Thanks,
talking
Guy.
about that?
Yeah, that was
Paul van der West.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Paul. Great. Thanks again, Tanya, as well. Hey, awesome to chat.
Thanks. It was lovely.
Really enjoying having the Zoom talks with you. It's been awesome. So look forward to the next one next Friday.
Yes, we'll see you then. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Okay, bye.